Good Shabbos. The Israeli novelist Amos Oz defined Judaism as a civilization of argument and doubt. The kind of argument he had in mind is what our sages called machlochet l'shem shamayim, argument for the sake of heaven, literally, but meaning argument for the sake of truth, as opposed to argument for the sake of elevating your own status and stature in the community. The easiest way to see the centrality of machlochet l'shem shamayim, I think, is to examine the most famous attempt to articulate a fixed Jewish faith and belief system. And this comes from Maimonides, the most famous Jewish philosopher, perhaps, but it comes from Maimonides in what he called the 13 Principles of Faith. He proposed these in the 12th century, and almost immediately after he revealed them, he was attacked for even articulating them. And even though they're part of our regular service, we sing them when we sing the Yigdal. The fact is, Jews have never agreed on these. I'm not going to go through and analyze them, but you should know what they are. So here is what he said Jews must believe with complete faith, he said, and which subsequent rabbis said, no, not so much. 13 of them. 1, belief in the existence of a creator God. 2, belief that God is absolutely one. 3, belief that God is pure spirit and has no physical characteristics. Number 4, belief in God's timelessness, God's eternity. Number 5, the imperative to worship God exclusively, the Jewish God exclusively. No other gods count. And he, of course, lived in a time when there were other gods, Christian and Muslim, as far as he was concerned. Jewish God exclusively. 6, the belief that God communicates with people through prophecy. 7, the belief that Moses is the greatest of all prophets. And again, Maimonides lived in Islamic countries where Muhammad is said to be the greatest of all prophets. So this was a real slap in the face to his Islamic neighbors. Number 8, the belief in the divine origin of Torah. Number 9, the belief that Torah is unchanging from Moses' time to our own. Number 10, the belief that God knows your actions. God sees and knows what you're doing. 11, the belief that God rewards and punishes you based on those actions. 12, the belief that the Messiah is coming. And then 13, the belief in the resurrection of the dead at the end of time. After listing and describing his 13 principles of faith, Maimonides writes this, and I'm going to read it. When all these foundations, his 13 principles, when all these foundations are perfectly understood and believed in, one enters into the community of Israel and is therefore worthy of love and compassion. But one who doubts any of these foundations leaves the community of Israel and is called a heretic, an apikoros. One such as this must be hated and destroyed. Maimonides, not a liberal. Let me be clear. I am an apikoros. Amos Oz is an apikoros. Many of the greatest rabbis of our history, especially those who attacked Maimonides and his list, people like Ibn Ezra, Nachmanides, Gersonides, Shneur Zalman of Liadi, who founded Hasidic Chabad Hasidism, just to name a few of them, all of them would be considered by Maimonides apikorsim because we're heretics. We don't believe in his list. We argue about it and we doubt its truth value. Argument and doubt is not only philosophical for us, it actually becomes part of a, I don't know what you'd say, maybe a physical reality, or it's spelled out in physicality by the very way we print our sacred texts. Take a look at a Talmud, and you see in the center of the Talmud page, you have a quote from the Mishnah, and then under that, you have rabbis arguing in the Gemara about the Mishnah. And then all around the Talmud page, you have other rabbis from diverse centuries arguing with the rabbis in the Gemara, but also with one another about the meaning and implication of what's in the Mishnah passage. Our books are arguments in their very physicality. No other culture has this, as far as I'm aware. No other culture has this. The Torah, too, when Rabbi Wendy and I went to school, seminary, one of the first texts we were given to study when we were studying Torah was Mikrot Gedolot, which is an anthology, not just of the Torah text, but an anthology of arguments about the Torah. In fact, the Reform movement just published a new translation of Mikrot Gedolot, which is excellent. The argument continues. So this, because it's even in the very structure of the printed page, this love of argument and doubt is really seared into the psyche of the Jewish people. Jews aren't believers. We are debaters, questioners, doubters. The most famous example of this is the great Talmudic debate recorded in Bava Metzia over the status of an oven bought by a guy named Acne. He wanted to know if it was kosher or not. To make a long and fairly well-known story short, the rabbis went to investigate the oven. All but one of them said it was not kosher. He couldn't use it. One rabbi, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, said, no, it's fine. All the rest, led by Rabbi Joshua ben Hananiah, said, no, Hyrcanus, Eliezer is wrong. So they have a debate. Eliezer fails to convince his fellow rabbis of his position using rational argumentation. So then he decides, forget the rational. He invokes the divine. He invokes the miraculous. And to prove his point, he says the tree in the courtyard, carob tree in the courtyard, should stand up, on its roots, uproot itself, walk across the courtyard and replant itself. And the tree does. And then Rabbi Joshua gets up and says, what does a tree know about an oven? We're not paying attention to a tree. Eliezer then says, okay, you don't like trees? How about the stream that goes through our courtyard? He has the stream run backwards through miracle working. And again, Joshua stands up and says, what does a stream know about kosher in the context of an oven specifically? Then Rabbi Eliezer gets so frustrated, he says, if I'm right, the very walls of this study are going to crumble in and crush you all. And then Joshua stands up and stops them from doing that. So because they honor Eliezer, the story says, the walls are like almost ready to crumble. But because they honor Joshua, they don't actually crumble. So now Eliezer is he's had it. He's tried reason. He's tried miracles. Nothing works. So he invokes God. And he said, if I'm right, God will reveal that truth to you. And then the voice of God is heard. Now, interesting, this is an aside. They call the voice of God a bat kol, like bat mitzvah, the daughter, the word bat means daughter. They hear the daughter's voice. Now, interesting, because it's an all-male, patriarchal culture. The God is considered masculine, male. And here, when they hear God speak, they don't hear, as I would imagine, and maybe many of you would imagine, they don't hear the voice of Charlton Heston, but in fact, the voice of a woman, Bat Kol, daughter's voice. In any case, the daughter's voice says, why are you arguing with Eliezer? He's always right. And then Rabbi Joshua jumps up and looks up. You have to imagine this. He looks up into the sky, into heaven, and he rebukes God. And he says to God, Lo bashamayim he, it is not in heaven. Eliezer is quoting Moses. Moses says something similar, but for a totally different reason. but Moses says something similar in Deuteronomy. And what Moses is saying, don't imagine that living the Jewish life, living Jewish wisdom, the wisdom of Torah, is something that can only be done if someone can go up into the heavens and bring it back to you, or if someone can cross the oceans and bring it back to you, that you can live it and observe it. He says, Lo bashamayim hi. It's not in the heavens. It's not in the sky. It's in your heart, or in your mouth and on your heart, that you might live it. Joshua is not interested in the Mosaic setting here. Joshua just basically says to God, Lo bashamayim hi, stay out of our business. You told us how to make decisions. You gave us the Torah. You gave us the Mishnah, in a sense. And now we're going to debate this stuff and come to our own conclusions. We're empowered to do this by you. Stay out of it. I don't know any religion that has anything like that in its sacred text. Later in the story, we learn that God, when God is rebuked, falls back onto his throne, and God starts laughing, and the tears are running down God's face. And God says, at last, my children have defeated me. I mean, Judaism has this deep humanistic streak that says God provides the principles. We, as human beings, through argument and doubt and debate, we have to decide for ourselves how to apply these principles. In 2012, I was invited to represent Judaism at an international conference in New Delhi, India. The conference was in honor of the 150th birthday of Swami Vivekananda, a very big, famous Swami in India, who was the hero, I guess, the most important speaker at the 1893 Conference of the World's Religions. The first time people from every one of the world's religions came together in one place. They came together in Chicago. And Swami Vivekananda gave an address that everyone just rose up and applauded for minutes on end. It was so powerful and so universally true and welcoming. So to celebrate his 150th birthday, the organization that he founded, the Ramakrishna Order, convened this world conference, and I was among the speakers. The topic was, what does your religion, only one thing really, it's what they wanted. What is the one thing that your religion brings to the table of the world's religions? What's the most important thing that your religion offers the world community of religious? I came with Amos Oz and the notion that Judaism is a religion of argument and doubt. I told them the story of Acme's oven. I went through a lot of other things about how this works and the structure of a Talmud page. I mean, things that I mentioned to you, but went into much more detail. As I remember the event, I remember I spoke after His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. I remember when the Dalai Lama came up to the podium, everyone rose to their feet and they applauded him for quite a while. I don't remember them rising to their feet with a standing ovation when he left the podium. I did not get a standing ovation when I walked up to the podium, but I did get a standing ovation when I left. Now, I'm not saying my talk was better than Dalai Lama's talk, though I think it was. I'm saying that what I had to say was so unusual to the listeners, was so unique, something that they had never thought of, that it just caused them to spontaneously get up and applaud the idea that you could be religious and argue with your tradition, doubt the veracity of your tradition, and even, as in the case of Acme's oven, even reject God in favor of human reasoning and debate. When this was over, I was swamped by swamis from all different branches of Hinduism. And they wanted to know more about what I was saying, but they really wanted to know how they could bring that into their tradition. Well, I had no idea how you can do that. This is part of Judaism. It goes back to Genesis. I mean, Abraham argues with God over what's just when God wants to destroy Sodom. Abraham says, you can't do that. How can you destroy the innocent along with the guilty? And he's got this great line. He says, should not the judge of all the world do justly? In other words, you're supposed to embody justice. You haven't even got a clue what it is. And the coolest thing about the story is God says, all right, so teach me. And then they have this debate, 50 people, then I won't, 50 good people, I won't destroy it. 40 good people, 30 good people. The idea is that God really didn't understand what justice was, but Abraham did. So God acquiesced in this story to human reason, human morality, and followed Abraham's lead. Now, Sodom gets destroyed anyway because they couldn't even find 10 decent people. And some rabbis argued that Abraham should have gone all the way down to one decent person and Lot could have saved the entire town. But that's not the point. The point is that Judaism has this rich and ancient tradition of argument and doubt, even to the point of elevating human reason above divine revelation. What was so startling to people 8 years ago in New Delhi, what was seen as so important to people 8 years ago in New Delhi, is no less important today. The world needs more argument and doubt. As millions and millions of human beings, including millions of Jews, slip ever more deeply into irrationality and illiberalism, conspiracy theories, authoritarian and ultimately and increasingly violent religions and political systems. As all this is happening, we Jews, Orthodox, conservative, Reform, Reconstructionist, Renewal, Humanist, and Apikorsim, heretics for that matter, we Jews need to affirm and celebrate and sharpen our capacity for argument and doubt, and then bring the Jewish gifts of argument and doubt to the world in such a way that moves humanity away from the brink of madness and fascism and back into the realm of machlochet l'shem shamayim, argument for the sake of heaven and truth. Good Shabbos.